What's up, guys? Carolina Jackpot coming at you on Wednesday evening, September 11th, 2019. We're talking college football week number 3. This is, as always, a sad, reflective day in our country's history. Of course, 18 years ago today was the attack on the Twin Towers, which is, if you're old enough to remember that, which it's kind of funny now that it's so vivid in my mind. It just seems like that was yesterday when that happened. But a lot of people who probably even watch these videos and are college football fans weren't even alive then. But I mean, to me, that's still so vivid. And that was such a scary day, and it was just such a tragedy. But we're going to talk some college football here and push on through. We have 20 games on the docket for the weekend of the 14th. I only did 20 this week, just kind of doing these off the cuff here. So we'll see how I do. Some of them are researched a little bit more than others. I got to level with you. I'm working like 64 hours this week at my job. So being able to research these games is just kind of tough some weeks. We're going to get into it. UNC on the road at Wake Forest. Wake Forest laying 3 at home against North Carolina. Of course, both teams are 2-0. Wake returns home after a 20-point win over Rice last weekend. UNC comes in after a 3-point win at home over the Miami Hurricanes. Last weekend, they came from behind to win that game. So it came behind 2 weeks ago to beat my Gamecocks in the fourth quarter. Proven that they can win in the clutch. Sam Howell is doing an amazing job for a true freshman. I think Matt Brown is really doing a great job there of coaching that team up. They're riding an emotional high right now. Can it continue? I think they finally lose this weekend. Wake Forest, I watched a couple of games, and I'm just really impressed with their quarterback, Jamie Newman. I'm impressed with the speed and physicality of their defense. They got some tall, rangy receivers who can make plays. This game is at Wake Forest. Traditionally, kind of a tough place for some teams to play in. This is actually not an ACC game. These teams are just rivals. So they wanted to play, I guess, but they already had the conference slate filled out, and the UNC's in the Coastal, Wake's in the Atlantic, and I guess that didn't work out for them to be the cross-divisional opponents this year. So they just scheduled a non-conference game as with 2 conference foes. I'm taking Wake here in this one. I'm taking Demon Deeks to cover the spread here. I think that would be a touchdown or less game, but I do think Wake Forest will get the win in that one. Kansas on the road at Boston College. Boston College are laying 21 points at home against Kansas. For Kansas, I mean, I don't know where you really find the positives at. They lost at home last weekend, 12-7 to Coastal Carolina, a non-Power 5 team. It's not very good. And week before, just barely won at home against Indiana State, which is an FCS school. That was with their running back suspended. Last week, he came back, had about 100 yards rushing, but they still couldn't get a win against Coastal Carolina. They couldn't get it in the end zone. Meanwhile, Boston College had no problems last weekend with Richmond at home. The week before that, had a pretty impressive victory over Virginia Tech at home. To me, this is an easy no-brainer. I'm taking Boston College and 21 points. Boston College, not really a high-scoring team, but I don't think that Kansas is really going to have an answer for A.J. Dillon, Anthony Brown. These guys have been playing pretty well, even though Boston College, like I said, not a high-scoring team, and Kansas, has a tendency to keep these games low-scoring. I still think that Boston College covers it here at home and gets an easy victory. We got Washington State going on the road to Houston. You think you'll see some points scored here? I think we will. Washington State done a nice job of replacing Gardner Minshew. They have a couple of blowout wins so far this year. Houston's defense not looked too good. They're 1-1 right now. Gave up a ton of yards to Oklahoma the first week. But still, we're actually able to cover the spread in that game. Last week, they played, I believe it was Sam Houston State. No, that's somebody else that played Sam Houston State. Houston had a victory that wasn't very impressive over one of the FCS schools. Maybe Prairie View A&M, it might have possibly been. Washington State, the pass defense for Houston, not very good. 9 points is not a lot. We were talking about a Washington State offense that puts up the kind of points that they do. Well, they haven't missed a beat this year. I'm taking them on the road here to cover the spread against the Houston Cougars. That 9 points, it's not a lot. Ohio State on the road at Indiana. These two have played some kind of close games in the past. A couple of years ago, they actually opened up the season at Indiana, and IU was leading up into the third quarter, and then kind of the bottom fell out, and Ohio State took charge and won the game. I think just barely covered the spread in that one. Last year was a relatively close game. So Ohio State still won. This Ohio State team, to me, looks better than last year's product. They look a little bit more focused, look better on defense. I had warned that I didn't think Cincinnati was that good, and I thought Ohio State would easily cover the 16-point spread last week against Cincinnati at home. I didn't expect them to shut them out 42-0. I mean, I just don't know how you can side with Indiana in this one. The only real test they've had was an opener against a non-Power 5 team in Ball State, an in-state rival that they played in Indianapolis. It was only a 10-point win for Indy, 34-24. Give me Ohio State in this one all day long. That's got to be a lock, stock, and two smoking barrels. I think they're going to run away with that. K-State on the road at Mississippi State. This is an interesting matchup. These two tangled last year. Mississippi State won. But K-State's kind of rebounding this year. Chris Kleiman, the new coach, over from North Dakota State, where he won several FCS titles. They're solid on both sides of the ball. A solid running game. Their quarterback is a senior, Skylar Thompson, just quietly done a really good job there for K-State. 8 points. I would kind of tend to side with Mississippi State, pulling out the win here just because this game is at home. But they've looked kind of lackluster in their two games, wins over Louisiana Lafayette and Southern Miss. Give me K-State here to cover the 8 points on the road. I don't know that they necessarily win that game, but I do like them to cover 8. Page here divided up this next one. So NC State, the Wolfpack on the road, laying 6.5 in Morgantown against the West Virginia Mountaineers. We definitely know that NC State's not giving up a lot of points this year. 2 games, only 6 points scored against them at a 34-6 win against East Carolina, and then last week, shutout win against Western Carolina. It's sneaky, looking like this team is going to be pretty good. Matthew McCoy, the new signal caller, steps in, takes over for Ryan Finley. Almost forgot his name there for a minute. And he's looked pretty good. They've looked pretty good running the ball as well. Now, yes, the competition has not been the best in the world, but I mean that was a pretty convincing victory over East Carolina in the opener, a team that some of them thought they might have a closer game than that against. West Virginia, we saw give up a lot of points last week at Missouri, and didn't look very well. They came really close to getting shut out on the road against Missouri. They're running through some tough times right now. Had some guys transfer out. Neil Brown, the coach from Troy, I think will have some success there. He's getting his system in there. Looks like he's kind of more of a strict discipline type guy. I think Holgerson was maybe more of a player's coach. So they're going through a transition period there. Still a game in Morgantown. This one's tough to call. 6.5 points. Not a lot. NC State, like I said, looked good so far. I don't know if I'm sold on them yet. This is going to be the true test right now. But as for right now, with the eye test, with what I've seen so far, I got to pick NC State in this game to cover here. It wouldn't surprise me, though, to see this one go the other way, being a big home game for West Virginia before they actually start conference play. But give me the Wolfpack, though, in this one, in a game that these two were supposed to have tangled last year. And they weren't able to because of the hurricane that swept through last year parts of North Carolina, South Carolina, Georgia, and Florida, and ultimately canceled a lot of football games around. The South Carolina football game against Marshall got canceled last year. Pittsburgh Panthers on the road at Penn State. Pittsburgh passing game's been terrible this year. They did get a win last week over Ohio U. I had picked Ohio U to win that game and spring the upset. It didn't happen. Didn't look particularly good week one against Virginia in a 30-14 loss. Penn State has looked good. They flexed their muscle week one. Well, they beat Idaho. Was it 79-0? It was really bad. Last week, convincing win over Buffalo. 17 points at home, Beaver Stadium. Not a lot of points here. Third game in a row at home for Penn State. They've blown Pitt out of the water several times in recent years. Now Pitt don't have any of those running backs back. Last year, got over 1,000 yards for them last year. This is going to have to be a tough year for them, I think. I'm taking Penn State here to cover the spread in this one. So I said their starting quarterback may or may not be injured and able to play in this game, but I'm still leaning towards the Nittanies in that one. Air Force, the Falcons, traveling to Boulder to take on the Colorado Buffs. This is a team that's coming off an emotional overtime win against Nebraska last week. Some might call an upset win. I actually picked that one, and Colorado did win that one. Air Force is 1-0, so they opened up the season a couple of weeks ago. They rushed for, I want to say, 400 and something yards in their win. Colorado probably going to have a tough time stopping that. The triple option is something you don't see very often. Colorado doesn't see it at all with regularity. I don't think these teams normally play each other, despite the fact they are both located in the state of Colorado. 4 points is not a lot. This is a tricky one for me. It is a very tricky spread here. You got to think Colorado's coming off that overtime win against Nebraska and, still kind of riding that one. Air Force had a week off last week. Colorado has had a long time to prepare for this game, though. So they have been, they've been studying this triple option for months, and they're preparing for it. And one thing, the little caveat here to this that kind of makes me lean towards Colorado in this game, their head coach, Mel Tucker, former defensive coordinator at Georgia. Who did he play every year? Georgia Tech. Yeah, I know he wasn't there forever, but he has defended the triple option a few years, which Georgia Tech doesn't run that anymore, but they did when Mel was defensive coordinator at Georgia. A lot of the tricks up his sleeve. Air Force, I don't think here just does not score enough points. Can't get it out. I think Colorado will cover the spread there and win that game. Florida Atlantic on the road at Ball State. This is, I know, who cares, right? But there's value here, 2.5 points. FAU laying on the road. I think Florida Atlantic wins this game, and I think they win it by a substantial margin. You've got to look at their competition. They were blown out in week 1 by Ohio State, who didn't really. It was a 45-21 loss, and you got to think, well, Ohio State just pumped the brakes there on them, but they didn't. Florida Atlantic made some halftime adjustments. They came out and they tightened up and were able to get some points on the board against a very good Ohio State team. Last week they were blown out at home by Central Florida, but a lot of teams have gotten blown out by Central Florida. Ball State with the loss to Indiana to open the season up. I believe they're 1-1 right now. They did get a win, I believe, in week 2 against a nobody. 2.5 points, not a lot. I think Florida Atlantic's just a much more dynamic team offensively, and I think they'll get the win there against Ball State on the road. New Mexico at Notre Dame. Notre Dame opened up the season, was I believe a 35-17 win on the road against Louisville, a game in which, I just think superior depth and just a little bit more experience there took over. But, Louisville was playing really well in that game, especially in the first half. Looked like a totally different team. If you didn't see it, I put up a video about that when that game happened on Labor Day night. That I could not believe how well Louisville was playing that game against Notre Dame. Haven't played since then. Both teams are 1-0. New Mexico that's the team that had the very, very unimpressive victory over an FCS team, Sam Houston State, which it's a decent FCS school, but it's still an FCS school. 35 points is a lot. I think Notre Dame's probably looking ahead to the rest of the schedule. It'd be easy for them to overlook New Mexico. Notre Dame also is a team that, if you just look back at them historically, they don't really get up for games like this. They don't play particularly well. Last year, for instance, almost losing at home to a Pitt team that wasn't very good. There's just been examples of that year after year, of them just underwhelming against not very good competition. 35 points, that's a lot. I'm going to take the New Mexico Lobos to cover the spread here in this game. I think Notre Dame will win by 28 to 31 points and, not really have any serious problems, but I don't think them to look especially flashy either. USC on the road at BYU. Of course, USC got a new quarterback broke in there. Freshman Slovis, Keaton Slovis is his name. Did really well against Stanford last week. It kind of lit them up a little bit. Stanford, a 45-20 loss to USC in Los Angeles last Saturday. That was one that I was not expecting at all from a Stanford team. They gave up that many points. Of course, BYU, they're coming off an emotional game, overtime win, kind of a come-from-behind deal on the road at Tennessee. USC is laying 4 here on the road. This is going to be a difficult environment for them to play in also. It's a venue that I don't know that they go to very often. Didn't really look up any series stuff here between these guys, but I can tell you I haven't known of them to play at BYU anytime in recent history here. BYU's a good football team. They had kind of a tough time in week 1 against USC's Pac-12 South rival Utah, and losing 30-12 there. But I think Utah is a much better team than USC, and I look for BYU to cover the spread here. I would not be surprised at all to see them win this game. It's just situationally, I think all things favor the Cougars in this one. Give me BYU. Alabama on the road against my South Carolina Gamecocks. Crimson Tide laying 25.5 at Willie B. As much as it pains me to do it, I trust Alabama's offense to score enough points and keep this margin comfortable enough to not really be seriously challenged here. What do you didn't, for all intents and purposes, the Gamecocks should just consider themselves 1-0. Okay, we had a really good win against a weak Charleston Southern team this past weekend, but that being said, quarterback Ryan Helinski, brand new starter, true freshman, and he has never faced anything like the speed, the agility that he is going to see on Saturday afternoon when the Crimson Tide comes to town. And our pass defense has not looked good. It didn't look good in week 1. I know I said forget about that game, but you got to fall back on it because you've got to have something to compare this to, because Charleston Southern is not anything to compare this to. Pass defense did not look especially good against North Carolina in week 1. Alabama's a little bit better than North Carolina. Just too much talent at the skill positions with Alabama. They ran through their schedule last year roughshod. This year, I think they've got that chip on their shoulder. They took their foot off the gas against New Mexico State last week. They took their foot off the gas also against Duke, I believe, in week 1. And this adds another element. This is a conference game. So they step up for conference games. Their conference game 2 years ago, they opened up on the road at Vanderbilt in their first conference game there of that season of 2017. It was 59-0. I'm scared, to be honest with you, that we might see a repeat of something like that. I think we'll actually put some points on the scoreboard here, but 25.5 is just not enough points. I'm going to have to take Alabama and Tua Tabanga here to cover the spread in this one against my Gamecocks. If you could get this one at anything 28 or less than 28, I would say take it. Anything more than that, I might lean the way of the Gamecocks, but I'm taking Alabama at 25.5 to cover the spread here. All right, Stanford is on the road at UCF. Another interesting matchup. Here, these two, first time meeting, if I'm not mistaken. Stanford lost 45-20 last week. Of course, we already talked about on the road at USC, and I got to blow this week. They have 2 starting offensive linemen who are going to be out. One's out for the year. The other one I don't know about. UCF, Daryl Mack, the quarterback who took over last year from Mackenzie Milton and did a fantastic job, is going to be back for the first time this season in this game. 8 points at home against the Stanford team, which, I would have kind of tended to maybe not lean the way of UCF a couple weeks ago when Stanford's defense was so staunch. They gave up 45 points last week. Very uncharacteristic there of Stanford. Is that an anomaly? Is a preview of things to come? I got to tend to think that maybe that defense is going to have a down year. UCF, 8 points. Shouldn't be a problem. Give me the Golden Knights in that one to cover against the Stanford Cardinal. Iowa at Iowa State. Hawkeyes laying 2.5 on the road against Iowa State, which game was spread, which I thought would be a little bit more than this. Iowa State's only played one game so far this year. Played Northern Iowa, an FCS school, and had to go to overtime to get the win. Iowa last week shut out Rutgers 30-0 in their Big Ten conference opener in the week before. Got a 38-14 win over Miami of Ohio. They look good this year running the ball, and quarterback Nate Stanley doing what he does, taking care of the ball. He's looking good so far. 2.5 points. These games are normally close between these two when they get together, with Iowa usually coming out on top. And I'm going to take them in this game to cover against Iowa State. We know more. I mean, we just know a little bit more about Iowa, even though Iowa State is a tough place to play. A lot of their Big 12 opponents have had a tough time there, but I think the Hawkeyes get the win here in this rivalry. I don't know what they call this one. Don't know what they play for, a little trophy or some sort. But anyway, I think Iowa gets the win on the road. Florida on the road at Kentucky. Florida's laying 8 on the road against the Kentucky Wildcats. I would have liked to lean the way of Kentucky until their starting quarterback Terry Wilson went down with an injury. Florida in week 1 got a 24-20 win over Miami Hurricanes in Orlando, actually in week 0. And then last week they blew out UT Martin. So Felipe Franks and crew looked a lot better last week. And they've got dudes. I mean, they got some athletes there. This is a revenge spot for them. Kentucky snapped, like a 30-game losing streak against Florida last year in the swamp. Benny Snell ran all over the place. I don't see a repeat of that happening this year. Lynn Bowden also played a big role in that game as well for Kentucky in getting that win. This one's still kind of tough. Kentucky's 2-0. Their 2 wins coming against MAC teams, Toledo and Eastern Michigan, where even though they did get the win, they still gave up a decent amount of points. I think Florida kind of underwhelmed a little bit in that game against Miami. You saw a lot of mistakes there, a lot of first game jitters. Terry Wilson, even though he's not the greatest quarterback in the world, I mean, a lot of people have kind of maligned him over the past couple of years for his inability in the forward passing game. I'm going to have to take Florida in this one to cover at Kentucky. Even though it is a big game, a big spot for Kentucky, I still think Florida gets the win by 10 to 14 points on the road. Florida State at Virginia. Virginia is 7.5-point favorites at home against FSU. Let me just go on ahead and make this one quick. That's not enough points. It is nowhere near enough points. Florida State, I don't know what is wrong with. They got a new offensive coordinator in this year. Kendall Briles is supposed to get stuff going. And, I mean, they've put some points on the board. But the problem is they've given up just as many as they've scored. And the second half for Florida State has been terrible. The second half against Louisiana Monroe last week, they totally fell apart. Allowed that team to get back in the ball game, tie it up, go to overtime. The week before that, at home against Boise State, Florida State was in control of the game at halftime, and they allowed Boise State to come storming back. They lost that game. I'm very high on Virginia this year. In fact, I think they'll run through the ACC Coastal, and I believe they run through that ACC schedule undefeated. I look for them to knock off Virginia or Notre Dame on the road in a couple of weeks, or wherever it is they play, maybe a month from now. But they do play Notre Dame coming up pretty soon. I look for Virginia to beat them. 7.5, not enough points. Going ahead, give me Virginia, Bryce Perkins and gang here to take Florida State to task in this game. Clemson on the road at Syracuse. Tigers laying 24 on the road against the Orange in the Dome. This is what we know. Clemson last week had no problems with Texas A&M. It was a 24-10 victory. Texas A&M with a backdoor cover on that spread. Clemson looked good in the entire game. They really just played like a C+ game. And it really wasn't a very exciting ball game to watch as a fan, or just the casual. I wouldn't call myself a fan. I'm a college football fan. I'm not a fan of Clemson. We all know that. But just effortless. I mean, didn't take a lot there. Texas A&M, I believe, a little bit overrated. Just couldn't get anything going at all offensively against Clemson. You got to come up with some kind of better game plan there. Syracuse went on the road against Maryland, got absolutely toasted. Was it 62-22 on the road, 62-23? It was terrible. Let's not overreact to that too much. Maryland is a team that is probably a little bit better than what you think they are. I had them picked in that game to cover the spreads. I like their running back, McFarland. I like Josh Jackson, the quarterback up there. He did some good things at Virginia Tech while he was there. Mike Locksley is just an offensive mind. He's from that Nick Saban school. So they got a lot of transfers also on their team, helping kind of bolster that roster up a little bit. So they're a better team than what you think. And I just think Syracuse just came in, probably didn't have a lot of film on them, and just kind of got Pearl Harbored. That won't be the case against Clemson. They've got familiarity. They did not have familiarity with Maryland. This is going to be a huge game for Syracuse. First time they've sold out the Carrier Dome, and God knows when. They didn't even sell out the Carrier Dome 2 years ago when they upset Clemson. Coming off of a 10-win season last year, I have no doubt that team is not. They're not going to be a 10-win team again this year. They may not even be an 8-win team. Tommy DeVito at quarterback, he is not what Eric Dungy was for this team. But 24 points is a lot when you're going on the road. Clemson is against a team that they've kind of struggled with the past 2 years. Lost to them in 2017. Really, really close game against them last year. They've struggled. Syracuse just somehow has gotten their number, gotten in their head. So I don't think you're going to go from losing and then a slim 2-point victory the next year to beating them by more than 24. I think Clemson wins this game pretty comfortably, but I think they win it 3 touchdowns comfortably. I look for it to be pretty close at halftime. Maybe Syracuse still hanging around, knocking on the door. Maybe still thinking they got a chance in it. And in the third quarter, Clemson just imposing their will on them and taking a commanding lead in the ball game. Look for Syracuse here, covering that 24-point spread, still losing the ball game. We got Oklahoma, the Sooners. Almost said Oklahoma State. You call me. Oklahoma Sooners going on the road, taking on UCLA Bruins. Oklahoma laying 23 on the road. Here's another case of that. That's not enough points. And I've got UCLA as a favorite there, and that is definitely a typo. Definitely. Dorian Thompson-Robinson, quarterback for UCLA. It's not looked good. Struggled big time against Cincinnati in week 1. Continued to struggle last week in a loss to San Diego State. Oklahoma put up a ton of points, ton of yards against Houston. Last week against South Dakota, no problems. Scored over 70 points there. 23 points, not a lot. These two teams took on each other last year, and Oklahoma won convincingly. And at UCLA actually looked better last year at this point than they have so far this year. Even same record, 0-2. A little bit more impressive, though. I'm going to lead in the way of Oklahoma here. Jalen Hurts, Lincoln Riley, and crew are going to cruise in that ball game. I could see them winning by 4 or 5 scores there. Arizona State on the road at Michigan State. Here's a revenge spot game from last year. Remember Michigan State going on the road and getting upset at Arizona State. It's kind of set last year's season. Just headed a bad way. That was, I think, week 2 last year, perhaps. Arizona State, Herm Edwards kind of managed the clock there towards the end. Got like a 2 or 3 point win in Tempe over Michigan State, a team that had so many injured players last year. It wasn't even funny. This year, Michigan State came out with a convincing 28-7 win over Tulsa in game 1. And last week, we actually saw Michigan State do something they haven't done forever. They score a ton of points. They won like 51-14 against Western Michigan. They're going to go 3-0 here. Revenge spot game. Look for Michigan State to cover spread. I think they take care of business against Arizona State. They've struggled. They are 2-0, but just 2 lackluster performances. Game 1, they took on Kent State, failed to cover the spread there. Won 30-7 against a team that's not very good. And then last week, they struggled winning 19-7 against FCS Sacramento State. So Arizona State, I think, definitely feeling the loss of their quarterback down there, who was a huge part of their offense. Still have Eno Benjamin down there, but they're struggling a little bit, and I think they take their first loss of the season Saturday against the Spartans. Final game on the docket, if we can find it up above the blank paper here. Arkansas State going on the road to Georgia. Georgia's laying 32 at home here. It was a 35.5 point spread earlier, and it's been bet down to 32. Why, I'm not exactly sure. Yes, Arkansas State 1-1, and they are a little bit better opponent, obviously, than what Georgia faced last week in Murray State. But a 1-1 record with a win last week against UNLV. Of course, in week 1, they took on SMU on the road and lost that game 37-30. Arkansas State gave up a ton of rushing yards to UNLV last week, almost 200 of them. They were able to keep them out of the end zone, though. But you play with fire like that against a team like Georgia, they're definitely going to get burned. Georgia's going to run over, through, around, on top of this team. It's not going to be pretty at all. Give me Georgia here, that 32 points. I could see them winning by that much at halftime. Their passing game is starting to come into its own, too. Jake Fromm's playing really well so far this year. Give me the Dogs in this one to cover that 32 points. I don't know why you wouldn't take that. And that concludes Carolina Jackpot's 20 picks against the spread for this week. I tried to get most of the SEC teams in there, and as many ACC teams as I could. Kind of cut out some of the obscure, irrelevant matchups that I've had in there in the past. But those will be coming back. Just fair warning, just to let you know, because I like looking at those games too. You can find value in some of those. I've just been kind of an abbreviated week this time, so I only did a docket with 20 games and did the 20 that I feel are the most significant. So that's it, guys. I hope you enjoyed that, and if you like the video, please make sure you hit it with a thumbs up. Subscribe to the channel if you're not already. We post college football videos here almost every day. Post scratch ticket videos also, and just general other videos that you might enjoy. I'm up to over 6,000 subscribers to the channel right now. I want to thank each and every one of you who is a subscriber. Without you guys, that would not have been possible. I really do appreciate it. It just seems like last week, it wasn't last week, it was actually right at the beginning of July, we were celebrating 5,000 subscribers with a 5,000 subscriber giveaway. Now we're up to 6,000 subscribers already. The channel has just experienced exponential growth over the past year, and I really do appreciate it. I can't thank you enough. So go Gamecocks, beat Alabama, and let me know what you think about the picks, guys. Put your comments in the comments section below. I'll see y'all later. Peace, and I'm out.